So it is hard to overstate the significance of today's Supreme Court ruling on President Trump's reciprocal tariffs. The justices, in a 6-3 decision, found that the import taxes he imposed under an emergency powers law are unconstitutional. The president personally attacked the justices who ruled against him, and he said he will put in place a different 10% global tariff, though there are questions about that new plan.
Other alternatives will now be used to replace the ones that the court incorrectly rejected. We have alternatives, great alternatives. Could be more money. We'll take in more money.
Tonight, we're hearing from a local manufacturing group on what this means for local jobs. Also, more political reaction to the high court's ruling. First, though, I spoke with an attorney who specializes in international trade. He was actually in the Supreme Court room during the arguments in this case. And I started today by asking him, what is the practical impact on those of you watching right now?
The price of imports will go down on a lot of goods. That will have an effect, it is hoped, on affordability. We all would like to see things be more affordable.
Governor Gavin Newsom from California, who is a critic of the president, said every dollar unlawfully taken must be refunded immediately with interest. Cough up. I know attorneys are lining up lawsuits as we speak. Some have already been filed, but we don't really know what's going to happen with refunds. How do you think that will play out?
What we've been telling our clients, Michael, is for some time now, whenever you pay the tariffs, it's coming in, you pay the tariffs, but you file a protest. They can file for a thing called a post-summary correction. All of these processes are difficult and take time, and they're only available to the listed importer of record. That's okay if you're Walmart or Costco or Amazon. What if you're a small business? What if you're a small business in Buffalo? You may not be listed in anywhere as being owed some money. You may feel it, but it's going to depend upon the contract between you and your supplier.
Do you think at the end of the day, though, refunds will go out? Or do you think, since this Supreme Court ruling doesn't say if it's, reactive or if it's prospective, if there will be refunds at all?
Well, the proper legal answer is we don't know, because the court hasn't said anything. My sense is that, as you can tell from the reliable opportunism of Governor Newsom, I think it will be politically untenable for there to be no refunds.
The White House has said the president will find ways to still institute these broad reciprocal tariffs. Do you think there is a mechanism out there for that to happen?
I think that there are other authorities open to him, most of which will require some process and sooner or later congressional approval. Based on the votes that have happened in the House and Senate in the last month, I think the approval of Congress will be difficult to get for these broad tariffs. I don't sense an appetite in the Congress for validating these tariffs. Quite the opposite.
Our thanks to Jim, who again was in the room during this case as it went before the justices. Of course, today reaction poured in from elected leaders and a lot of groups that are opposed to these tariffs. Governor Kathy Hochul from here in New York called the tariffs an unlawful backdoor tax on hardworking families, farmers, and small businesses, raising prices on everything from groceries to building materials. Senator Chuck Schumer from here in New York, also a Democrat, said, quote, "We've said from day one, a president cannot ignore Congress and unilaterally slap tariffs on Americans. That overreach failed." And the Business Council, which is essentially the Chamber of Commerce for the state of New York, generally a conservative organization, said, quote, "Tariffs are nothing more than a tax that ultimately impacts employers, workers, and consumers alike." Local manufacturers, many of whom have been big supporters of President Trump, have largely opposed these tariffs. Earlier today, I talked with Peter Ahrens, executive director of the Buffalo Niagara Manufacturing Alliance.
Is what we learned today good news for local manufacturers?
It's a good first step. The Constitution points out that the president doesn't have the capability to dictate what tariffs are placed on whom. Should we get to the point where Congress can get more involved, I think it's going to inure to everybody's benefit, because I know they want to make sure they're doing the best for their constituents.
What have you heard recently from your members about the impact of these tariffs that now have been in effect for, more than half a year?
Yeah, from our December results, the respondents mainly indicated over 80% of them have noticed significant increase to raw materials. Those are input costs to fabricate whatever components they are fabricating. There still needs to be lots of work done. I don't think going back to how things were is the answer, but I think being more thoughtful and surgical in the nature of developing these tariff and in the new levels, should we get to that point, will be meaningful for not only our manufacturers to help onshore more jobs to this country, but build manufacturing and up and making it great again here in the United States. And certainly Western New York, which, as you know, we're a manufacturing town. We're the heartbeat of America.
Peter, am I right in saying that your members, local manufacturers, are generally supportive of some tariffs, just not these sort of wide-ranging and wildly fluctuating import taxes?
Yeah, that's correct, because over the previous 25 years, the United States really had a de-emphasized manufacturing. So I think if we can take a common sense approach and have those conversations with the respective countries and point out why we're doing what we're doing or proposing what we're proposing, hopefully logic prevails. Manufacturing has dropped in employment. They're shedding jobs, whereas a year and a half ago, the conversation was, I can't get enough workers. Now they're starting to shed. So I think if we can get a path forward, it's going to be meaningful for both our manufacturers today and the future manufacturing.
Peter told me that he works closely with our two Republican members of Congress, Nick Langworthy and Claudia Tenney. Langworthy put out a statement late this afternoon and said in part that this ruling is strictly centered on the president's authority under IEEPA, that is that emergency law. And he said, quote, "It is incumbent on Congress to work with the president to create the best possible trade environment for the United States."